Hey everyone, Drago here, bringing you the leader breakdown for Dragon's Lair Austin Store Regional. This happened this past Saturday, July, I guess it would be the 13th. 64 players like usual, and yeah, let's just get into it. So starting off, this is the overall leader breakdown of all 64 leaders. Law and Lucci were the two most brought decks at 11 each, with Enel at 10, Bonnie a little bit lower at 7, 6 Black Yellow Luffys, 5 Morias, 4 Peronas, 3 Boa, 2 Nami, and then a couple 1-Ls of Yamato Okada, Dofi, Purple Luffy, and Green Uta. You'll see that some of these leaders had an insane conversion rate, and some of them did not. So let's go into the top 16. So as you'll see here, in top 16, we had 3 Red Purple Law, 3 Black Yellow Luffy, 2 Nami, 2 Lucci, 2 Boa, or 2 Bonnie, 1 Boa, 1 Enel, 1 Kata, and 1 Perona. And so both Namis were in top 16. Half of the Black Yellow Luffys were in top 16. And those 3 also made it to top 8. The 3 Laws at top 16 were also in top 8, including winning the entire event. One of the Namis made it to top 8. In fact, they got second place. Only 1 Lucci in top 8, only 2 in top 16. Um, so you can see that Lucci kind of didn't really convert as well as you would expect. Law to a lesser degree, only 3 overall, but then they took up 3 of the top 8 slots, including winning the event, so it definitely did better on that regard. And then Black Yellow Luffy, um, super overperforming, only 6 reps, all 3 making it to top 8, including the highest place being 4th. And I actually had the deck list for the highest placing unique leader for each of the top 16 leaders. So we'll actually go into that next. So first place we have Kaiju. Believe he was from Houston, playing RP Law. Pretty standard list when you look at it at first glance, but there's actually a couple really interesting ratios and tech choices. As you can see, he is at 7 Raise Max and Gordon, which isn't like super absurd. Right now, you're either at 7 or 8, but usually when you're at 7, you're like compensating with either an extra Otama or some other reducer. He's actually doing it 2 different ways. One, he has 2 Fire Fist and 2 Ace on top of a third Otama. Most lists you see are at 8 Gordon, 2 Otama, no Fire Fist, no Ace. He said, okay, I'll do 7, but I'm going to have an extra Otama, 2 Fire Fist, and 2 Ace. Clearly it worked out very well for him too. He has the one of Zoro, Rush Zoro specifically, which is being played less and less. Um, but overall, I like this list. It's pretty simple. He played really well all weekend long, and it's very interesting to test the ratios of 2 Ace, 2 Fire Fist. I don't necessarily mind Gordon being at 7, like that's kind of whatever, even if you didn't have these, as long as you had maybe a 4th Otama, or a 3rd Otama, or like 1 Toy Law or anything. But to not only use Fire Fist, but also use Ace, very interesting. And obviously it worked out for him, he took it down. Then second place, we have Selly with Nami, also from Houston, I believe. Pretty standard Nami list. I'm pretty sure the only difference is the one of Zeph. And I know it came up because the other Nami, whose list we won't be going over, Edward, um, they actually played the mirror, I believe, round 3 or 4. And Zeph pretty much won Selly the mirror straight up. Not necessarily because Zeph swung in, but Zeph bounced to Kaya and uh, obviously milled 2 as well. So that was already +4 cards lost, or drawn, I should say, in the mirror, where you're unironically just saying pass, 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 unless you have a Kaya or like a Pilaf. So the one of that very interesting. I see it as it's replacing the 4th Abyss as far as I can tell, and because I think this is my list exactly that I found from I think the EU Nami list that topped a couple weeks ago. I think the only difference is that the 4th Apis has become a Zeph. And it makes a lot of sense, and it worked out in the mirror. I wonder how it worked in other matchups. If you even played it, if it's just a 1K, sometimes you may search it off of Apis because it is a target. But pretty standard Nami list, nothing too crazy. Third place, we actually got my boy Frankie, aka Extensions 14, playing Lucci. His list is, I would say, not super standard, at least not yet, because he's running Stage and Brook, but also the other version of Brook. Only one Sabo, one Stussy. While also running Borsalino and Isho. I feel like most of the time I see Stage. I haven't seen Isho played as often. Same with like the 6-cost Brook in that. And overall, we were talking about the list because I was just curious. He said Borsalino underperformed, Brook overperformed, but he also played a lot of mirrors and not that much Red Purple Law. So they would slam a Borso in the mirror and he would just Brook them and it felt really good. But he also mentioned that versus I think the one Law he played, I think he lost to Nami, but the one of the Laws he played, that was one loss Nami, which was Selly, I believe. That Brook was definitely too expensive at times. He said he never saw the one of Sabo. Stussy was good, and that everything else was good. That Isho helped him beat Black Yellow Luffy. Pretty standard overall, nothing too crazy. Just mixing in 6-Ox Brook and Borsalino really into a stage list, which worked out for him really well. Fourth, we have Rick with Black Yellow Luffy, the highest placing Black Yellow Luffy, because I know 5th place was Black Yellow Luffy, and I believe so was 8th. This is also a relatively standard Black Yellow Luffy list. He has this slight tech for Bonnie with 2 Ice Age. Thunderbolt is, I'm seeing it on and off used. I think it's a pretty decent card. Sometimes it's just a good sack out of life. Other times it's a good enabler. Oh, I'm KOing one of your 5s for 2 Dawn, and now I'm at 0. Now I can leader ability. I can go crazy. Go from there. But nothing too crazy. 3 Ace. That's the brother that gets cut the most. 3 Luffy with the Ice Age can be very dirty. If you play a Bonnie and you have enough of the Rocket Luffy and trash, Ice Age Luffy doesn't care if Rosinante's on board with the kid, for example. Could you go, you just pop kid twice essentially and it's fine. But yeah, pretty standard, good stuff to Rick for his placement there. Then the next unique deck that doesn't already have a representation is the only Katakuri in the entire event, and it's Saffron's Katakuri. They are a local to the Austin scene, been getting better week by week, and it's a relatively standard list, at least from my perspective. This is my partner, so I actually go over the list with them. Earlier, I remember when 07 came out, they're like, what do I add? And I was like, 4 A's, I'm pretty sure. I don't see why you wouldn't want 4 10 drops. And it's worked out for them really well. But I think it's relatively standard. I think maybe you wouldn't see Sanji in other lists. But overall, I think this list is fine. I think they're trying to go to 2 7-drop to put in 2 katas going forward. But overall, the ratios make sense. Good amount of body triggers. You have 3, 4 really. Technically 5 with Shirahoshi. You have an insane late game. You're still running 12 2Ks plus 3 of the 0-cost events, so essentially 15. Pretty standard deck. If you get to the late game and you start spamming these two, it gets especially dirty if they go first and they're able to go 7 mom, and then either of the 10 drops. It just makes that late game push a lot more consistent. There are times where Ace is better than 10 mom. There are times where 10 mom is just 10 mom. And I've definitely seen Ace for game multiple times when the board is already big, because it's oh, there's a 7-drop in a Gidatsu and 110 mom. Okay, just swing out and then go rush Ace, because even if it doesn't go through, I just healed back to 2. And I have 7 cards in hand and an insane board, blah, blah, blah. But very good stuff to them on their 9th place finish. Then at 10th, we have Late Night Sausage, aka Nick, another Nick. And again, this is a pretty standard NL list, nothing too crazy. No real tech cards, just slightly different ratios for everyone. We're seeing a lot of the 2-drop EB01 Shirahoshi be used more recently, especially because RP Law doesn't seem as popular as it should be, given how good it is. I feel like this is one of the few events where I see RP Law was heavily represented. It was in the top 2, tied at 11. But I feel like any of those other store regionals I've seen, or even the couple events that have happened in Australia and EU that Law isn't being played as much as we think he probably should. Obviously, he gets significantly better in 08. Maybe people are hesitant because we think it's going to get touched in that August 12th ban list. Um, or they just, even if it doesn't get touched, they just don't want to play it right now when it's not the best because they can just wait because they know 08 is kind of like a tier 0 meta with that deck. Who knows? But right now, when the meta's a lot of Luffy, Lucci, the Mirror, I think Shirahoshi is a great card. I think 7-drop and L helps a lot versus Lucci as well. Rygo at 3 is like the only thing I don't like. I think Rygo is your main win condition. I would have that at 4. Probably cutting like the 6 cost Sparrow to 1 or something like that. But nothing too crazy. Like, this is pretty standard. Um, Pretty good in L list. Pesky, get to the late game and just start chaining. Ace, Yamato, Kata, even an L early can help too. Pretty good. Congrats to Nick on his 10th place finish. Then 11th was Grab My Bacon with Boa Hancock. This is, I don't know most of the Boa lists aside from, like, I know how they vary from Dofi, which is the deck I play more. But the only thing that stood out to me a little bit were his ratios. Only 2 of the 2K Law, and then 2 Femur instead of, I don't even know what the alternative would be. I guess it would be maxing out Mihawk and potentially running a couple Weevils. I know in Boa you definitely don't need 4 Weevil. You probably only run 1 to 3. That would probably be the only difference. Maybe you make Femur a 1 and you put in that 1 Weevil. But I think overall it's a pretty standard list. 4-3 for Red Rock. Maybe it's a little high, but you kind of need Red Rock. And obviously, I think Gravity Blade at 4 is fine. It's more so, do I want Red Rock at 2 or 3? I think at 3 is fine. It's not a bad thing. 3 Kaido makes sense. I think Draw Kaido is the best late game for this deck. Pretty standard list. I don't think, 2 Femur and only 2K Law are like egregious, obviously. 2 Gum Rain to help with the breaks, which you have a couple. Mainly these cards in the middle. 3 Pudding, pretty standard, help you with Black Yellow Luffy, stuff like that. Pretty standard list, nothing too crazy. I actually played him round 4, and I was on Bonnie, and we'll see my list later. And yeah, it was pretty hard to beat double Boa, double Gravity Blade, Red Rock, and a Kaido as Bonnie. But I got close, and he did really well. Only performing Boa too. I think there was only, I believe, less than 4 in the total event, and he was the only one that was even in the top half, I believe, of the event, and he did great. 14th, the next unique deck is Pronibs with Perona, another Austin local. This is a pretty standard Wano Perona list, nothing too crazy. I think most Wano Perona lists aren't running Stussy or Dofi, so that is unique to his list as far as I know. I've seen some lists opt for Akos Sabo over something like Stussy, but now that I think about it, Stussy makes a lot of sense for this deck. You're playing a lot of the 1-drops, whether it's Otama or Momo, sometimes Suru's on your board, sometimes Belmare on your board, and you can use the effect first. Like Belmare, obviously the minus isn't relevant for Stussy, but the plus 1k power can be. And so I don't see how Stussy, I understand it's single target removal, which deck already does amazing with because of Ryuma, but I guess he's trying to supplement, like, okay, if I can't clear wider boards, I'm gonna set up a taller board and then lock you out with 10-drop Dofi as well. We are seeing no Ice Age as well, which is a little interesting. Normally you like Ice Age to get most characters into like the Ryuma range, but I understand that. 3 Borsa are pretty standard, 3 Sabo pretty standard. But yeah, these two, the main difference in most of the lists I've seen. But I think it makes sense. If honestly, the only thing I would change is I don't think Hiyori has to be a 4 of, because most of the time you're trying to see her in trash anyway. So you either trash her from Sabo, or you just play her early to get her in trash so you can have it ready for a Moria play. You could probably cut it to 3, put in an Ice Age or something. Maybe cut Samurai to 3, and that's how you get 2 Ice Age, and then that's a list. Regardless, he did great. I know Wano Perona is getting a little bit of play here and there. I want to see it played a little bit more, but honestly, it's a good list. It's a very fun deck because you're just drawing cards constantly. Whenever you tap either Searchers or even just like Ryuma Morias, like if you want to swing into these, that's fine. With Samurai, your opponent to a certain degree, as long as they have Searchers at least, they kind of have to deal with the board. Because if you're just gonna loop Samurai, loop Momo, whatever, it's like, wait, well, I go infinite with card draw, and it's like pretty hard to beat a deck that has some of the best late game in the game with Moria, with Stussy, with a 10 drop Dofi. Um, so very fun deck, and it makes sense too because if you already have the board too, thanks to a Moria play the turn before, on 10 dawn you can be my Samurai, resto let's say double Otama or like Suru Otama. All right, cool. I drew 2 cards. I'm gonna play Stussy and pop your big body. I just drew 2 cards and popped everything on your board, or like a massive thing on your board, I should say. Pretty. I like the Stussy choice a lot actually. Then at 15th we actually have my Bonnie list. I was not the highest placing Bonnie, but I know I can talk about my list more than I can someone else's list. The 12th place, we were both X2. He was on a hybrid build, nothing too crazy. I think it was almost exactly Noel's list that I'm sure most of y'all have seen. I'm choosing to highlight mine because obviously I can give you more insight to my list, and the changes I would make. So this is my list. I'm on pure Supernova for now. I am probably going to hybrid. I think having the double searcher is more so about forcing your opponent to potentially have to swing into the searchers in the mid to late game, um, which acts as a free block. And if they don't do that, you basically go infinite with card draw, which is like amazing for you. The turns where I have like a searcher or two, and then I set up Kid, and obviously I didn't search again with those searchers, and now I have Kid set up. I'm drawing 2, 3 cards a turn, which is crazy. Um, I don't mind pure supernovas. I wanted to try to make it work, but I know Dofi was good, so I splashed it in. Same with like Zoro. But I think, generally speaking, I only did supernova because I was lazy and didn't want to like do double search. I was like, oh, I'll just do single search. It's fine. I want to run my 4 fancy Apu, blah blah blah. But the more I think about it, I think hybrid makes sense. Dofi being searchable is nice, but the main thing is with double searcher, you make it a lot more likely that you have a searcher on board, and that creates a legitimate decision if they don't have like a 1 drop or a 2 drop to just swing into your searcher for free. They had to make a decision like, am I going to swing at this 1 drop searcher, or am I going to let them go infinite with card draw? And it's a very legitimate choice, a hard choice. Sometimes there are turns where I'll go second, I have double searcher in my hand, and I'm just able to go uh, like play both searchers turn 1, turn 2 is when I double search. And if they didn't see like a turn 1 or turn 2 play, one of those searchers is staying alive as well. Very crazy, lots of card draw. But I don't mind this list. I think this is probably one of the best pure Nova lists you can make, but I'd definitely go to hybrid. And that wraps up the top 16 breakdown for the Dragon's Lair Austin Store Regional. Shout out to Dragon's Lair for hosting, the judges, Kayvon, Viet, Calvin did an amazing job. All the Houston and Dallas players for coming. Some RGV players. I think someone drove from New Orleans. Someone flew from New Orleans, and someone drove 19 hours from Vegas to get here. That's crazy to me. In no way is that worth it. But I mean, it's cool that they showed up, but there's just no way that's worth it. I hope Bandai adds more store regionals going forward, or maybe like a regional limit, because traveling for these, I feel like to a certain degree, um, defeats the purpose. But it's like a mixed broad, because like from RGV it's a 5-hour drive. If there was one in RGV and you were in Dallas, it's an 8-hour drive. Am I gonna say an in-state drive isn't fair? No, of course it's fair. But damn, 19 hours from Vegas? What are we doing? But I'll upload my POV from this tournament soon. I recorded all 6 rounds. I went 4-2 as Bonnie. And those will probably be up sometime either later today or tomorrow. And then this week I'm testing a bunch of new decks. Black Yellow Luffy, potentially Nami, a couple other decks. But thank y'all for tuning in. If you like this style of video where I talk about deck lists or whatever, I might do it more in the future when it's relevant, like whenever we have a big tournament or something. But otherwise, thank y'all for tuning in. And again, congrats to Kaiju and all the tops who got their invite. And yeah, see y'all later.